I'm joining you from the occupied lands of the Ohlone people in the East Bay of California. As always, we encourage all our participants located in the Bay Area to pay their Shumi land tax, which you can do by following the link in the chat. Speaking of the chat, it will be disabled for these calls, except for us to share information with the audience. If you have questions you'd like to get answered during the call, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. In that same toolbar, you can find the CC button to enable closed captioning. We are also grateful to have ASL interpreters on hand throughout this call. On behalf of CPE, Bay Resistance, Arab Resource and Organizing Center, and the Anti-Police Terror Project, thank you for joining the fourth of our weekly PSA calls, or Palestine Solidarity Announcements. These calls are a space for us to provide you with weekly updates on what's happening in Palestine, the most recent calls to action, and ways you can join the ongoing solidarity work for Palestine in the Bay Area. In November of 1947, just over 76 years ago, the United Nations convened to debate whether it should adopt the partition plan for Palestine that ultimately led to the crisis today. In that debate, Sir Mohammed Zafarullah Khan, the envoy from Pakistan, was one of the very few notable outspoken opponents of the plan, and in a memorable speech said, quote, "The United Nations is on trial today. The world is watching, and we will see how it acquits itself again, perhaps not so much from the view of whether partition is approved or not approved, but from the point of view of whether any room is left for the exercise of honest judgment and conscience in decisions taking upon important questions." The key question that day was the question of Palestine. And unfortunately for Khan, and more importantly for Palestinians, the UN indicted rather than acquitted itself that day, undermining its credibility and voting in favor of partition. Khan's foreboding words rang true. He noted that as a result of the decision, Palestine would not belong to its people, but rather would, quote, "be stretched upon the cross." That premonition of suffering has been repeated time and again as Palestinians have made their case to the world that the occupation is unjust and their displacement part of an ongoing program of ethnic cleansing. Yet despite the failures of the UN, the Genocide Convention, passed at the UN just 3 years later in 1951 in the General Assembly, and born of the unspeakable horrors of Europe and by Europe that were used to justify the appropriation of Palestine and the negation of Palestinian self-determination. That convention is at the heart of something we'll spend time discussing today, the legal case of Defense of Children International Palestine versus Biden. That case, which will be heard in a federal court here in Oakland, will be an important focal point of our efforts to stop the genocide in Gaza and establish accountability for our own government's central role in the unspeakable violence. Today's agenda is as follows. First, we're honored to be joined by poet, writer, and organizer with Palestinian Youth Movement, Violette, who will share a poem to open our space. She'll be followed by sematics practitioner and organizer with Families for Ceasefire, Melissa, for a short sematics grounding practice. Next, we'll hear from Samer from Arab Resource and Organizing Center with analysis on recent political developments. Then we'll hear an update from Ziad from Middle East Children's Alliance on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. That report will lay a strong foundation for the discussion of the DCI-Palestine versus Biden legal case. Asta from Center for Constitutional Rights will help us understand the convention and the legal theory of this case, which we'll be discussing in more detail in the next 2 weeks. Rafielway from APTP will be providing us with an update on the Reclaim MLK Week of Action. And finally, Michelle will bring us home with a brief summary of recent actions and what's ahead. Again, thank you for joining us today. We need your voice and your actions more than ever in the days ahead and the weeks ahead. Stay tuned in, be resilient in your fight, and let's end this genocide together. And with that, I will turn it over to Violette.
Hi, everybody. It's a really honor to be here. My name is Violette. I'm a member of the Palestinian Youth Movement, and I'll be sharing a poem with y'all today that I wrote for my grandmother, who was forced to flee her home from the fear of massacre in 1948 during the Nakba, and she was never allowed to return after she fled. The Nakba, which I'm sure some of y'all already know, marks the destruction of over 500 of our villages in Palestine and the forced expulsion of over 75% of our population. Today in Gaza, over 2 million have been displaced from their homes. More than 30,000 have been murdered by the genocidal Zionist regime. And we know that what Israel is trying to do in Gaza right now, with the discussions that they're having internationally, right, with other countries and in the international sphere, is to secure the forced migration of people out of Gaza to Europe. This is exactly what happened during the Nakba. This is the genocide and ethnic cleansing that we know is the logic of Zionism, to eliminate our people, our land, our memories, and the resistance and the spirit of the Palestinian people. And we also know that that will never happen. My grandmother's home is destroyed and a garage now in the old city of Jaffa. No one in my family was able to return before me. Ben Gurion said that the old will die and the young will forget, but the young have not forgotten. And the young, as youth, Palestinian youth, we have a responsibility to our people and our struggle. And we will never forget. And we take on that responsibility generation after generation. I have not forgotten my people, my grandmother's home, our land in Jaffa, the 1.2 million people in Gaza who were displaced during the Nakba, have never forgotten their villages or where they are from. And because we will never forget, and because we will continue to fight, and the brave people of Gaza are paying the ultimate sacrifice for liberation and return, we must continue to fight. And we need solidarity to be able to do that. And so I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to share this poem for my grandmother and for the memories that we will never forget and the future and victory that is inevitably coming for our people and our land. This poem is untitled. Untitled, not unnamed, there is a difference. This has a name, I have a name, I just don't know who named it. At first this was titled, named after something, named after me, named after her, named by them, but I still don't know how to say it correctly. This is a name I must learn to say correctly, spoken in the tongue of violence and the colonizer's voice. Inherited from my mother's mother home was a name Jaffa, renamed Tel Aviv. Understood only as violet, as purple flowers, as roots, as soil that belongs to my grandmother's skin, skin that carries too many burdens to count, body bent to them, bones broken for them, them tainting everything beautiful and sacred in the oil of their hands. Her skin becomes home, and home becomes never enough money, of ma'alatin sukkar and black tea and sleepless nights and dirty sheets. And if the skin becomes home, then the skin becomes hollow, left hollow by them taking the skin as if it is their home, leaving only broken bones and puddles of blood, skin forced from home, laid to ruin by countries controlling peace, from pedestals of power and checks, made payable to 1948, stolen family estates, unkept promises, too late. And if the skin is a home, then the skin has a name erased, silenced, pronounced wrong. This name holds white hands, dividing borders drawn by white fingertips and named by white fists within my chest. And this white picket fence ripped apart, burned, cement now, a wall now. It is a name that carries collapsed and crippled homes on backs but with agony. Can we even call this a home? I wore this name on my forehead, laid it across my bed, strung it around my neck, but on the soil, the blood of all my people burns my skin. It starts to seep through my clothes, and my name burns my lip with the bite of my tongue. Have they claimed this too? How do you breathe if your lungs are occupied? How do you speak in a tongue that isn't yours? How do you grow in a soil that is meant to eat you alive and throw you up in its image, erasing the terrain of your body until nothing is left? How do you fight if nothing is left? We fight regardless. We name ourselves now. With the sound of our voices, we name ourselves resistance, muqawamah, resilience, samud, roots, jadur, with all the women that have come before as all of me. This is a name we must learn to say correctly. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, V, for that powerful, powerful poem. In line with the theme of naming today for our somatics practice, I want us to consider the experience, the embodied experience of language. Language is just an approximation of our human experience. The majority of who we are and our experiences lays beyond the realm of what words can touch. Take, for example, the concept and the experience of love. There are millions of words written about love, books, poems, songs, films, and yet nothing can quite capture the exact experience of what it feels like to love and be loved. So part of colonization is the separation between the mind, the body, the spirit, intuition, our emotions. And for our somatics practice today, I'm going to be sharing, I'm going to be speaking a few words that will help us root into this movement for the long term, some values. And I want each of you to consider and to experience what these words feel like in your bodies. So, taking a moment to get comfortable, you can be sitting or standing or laying down, and noticing your breath. Just beginning to deepen your breath. Noticing your toes, your lower extremities, noticing your fingers, and noticing the very top of your head. Endurance. Hold this word endurance in your chest. Maybe it helps to say it out loud. Notice if you can expand this feeling inside of your body. Solidarity. Holding this word solidarity in your chest, saying it out loud if it helps. And once again, just seeing if you can expand this feeling of solidarity. Liberation. Holding this word liberation in your chest, saying it out loud. Noticing what it feels like. trying to expand this experience of liberation. And the last word, love. Noticing what love feels like. Noticing that love is a regenerative source of energy. That if you ask love to expand, love gladly expands. These are small practices that you can do every day. It takes 1 minute. And just like that, we can expand our internal capacities for holding these values and enacting these values on the world with our actions. Thank you for practicing with me today. Back to you, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Violette and Melissa, for reminding us of the critical importance of culture and mindful practice to sustain us in this fight. Now for an update on the situation on the ground and political developments in particular, we have Samar from Iraq.
Thanks, Thomas. It's great to be here with you all again. As always, I struggle to contain the enormity of everything that is happening into a 10-minute update. So please take it all with a grain of salt. I'm trying to pull up things that I think are particularly important or relevant. And I'm probably going to go relatively quickly through some of the things. But I've included links in there so that if you want to get into them in more detail later, you absolutely have the opportunity to do that. Let me just, as always, I like to start in what's happening in Gaza and then zoom out a little bit to what's happening in Palestine generally, zoom out a bit more to regional impacts of this war, and then talk about the sort of like international dimension of things, and then start zooming back in here. So what's happening in the United States, and then what's happening in San Francisco or the Bay Area specifically. So the high level overview, and I won't spend too much time on this because I think Ziad is going to speak to the humanitarian situation a little bit more. Just that you know, the carnage continues, the death toll continues to rise. These numbers are extremely conservative, and there are reports now that the number of people who are dying from the health impacts of the siege of Gaza may well mirror these numbers. So we're talking about, you know, around 2 to 3% of the population of Gaza possibly dead at this point, and the obviously horrific impacts on civilian infrastructure and symbols of Palestinian cultural heritage. The big news this week, well, there's a lot of news this week. One of the big pieces of news this week is the troop withdrawal that happened at the beginning of the new year, which has been long expected and has been pushed by the United States as pressure for a ceasefire and a de-escalation continues to grow. So most of the battalions that are currently in Gaza from the Israel armed forces have left, but that does not mean that the war is over. It just means that it's entering a different sort of phase. And I think we'll loop back around in a little bit to talk about where those forces are going, because they're certainly not being completely demobilized. And just to note that Israeli forces themselves have said that the war is expected to last through 2024. And so that obviously speaks to the need to continue to apply pressure to force them to further de-escalate, lest they continue to do the sort of carnage that they've been doing, which, you know, even with this troop de-escalation, like the violence isn't any lower than it was the week before. Again, this isn't a thing I'm going to spend too much time on because I imagine Ziad will speak to it, but I did want to note not only the continued and accelerated use of starvation as a weapon of war, but also the way that it continues to be portrayed in Western media. This article from the New Yorker along with a series of others, if you read them, are quite powerful. They do speak to the suffering of the Palestinian people, and yet somehow in this entire article, the word Israel is never even mentioned. So like there's a continued desire to not put the blame where that blame belongs. And that, obviously, again, speaks to the need to sort of put pressure on those institutions. The situation there is so bad that 80% of global famine is happening in Gaza. So of everyone in the world who is experiencing the highest level, stage 5 of starvation, 4 out of 5 of those people are Gazans. So just to speak to like the extent to which this has become a really endemic problem. I think I've accidentally gone too far, but there we go. Along with that, and as part of the underlying reasoning behind it, is a campaign of continued ethnic cleansing, and this time specifically in a way that the Israeli forces are referring to as voluntary resettlement. Voluntary meaning they've made conditions there so unlivable that they expect Palestinians to migrate out of Gaza en masse. And they have been in these sort of conversations with other countries, including the Congo, where Israel continues to support the ongoing military genocide that's happening there, to push Palestinians into that area. There's so much that we could say about this, but unfortunately we have very little time. So if it's a thing you want to discuss, please let me know. This plan, which was originally broached by the hard right members of the Israeli cabinet, was immediately denounced by the U.S. government in the way that the United States government denounces these things. So like the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also the State Department spokesperson, reject the inflammatory rhetoric and say that there should be no mass displacement. But to give you a sense of how toothless those statements are, the next day, the hard right minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who made those statements, responded and was just like, you don't get to tell us what to do. So just to show that, the United States isn't really willing to be meaningfully tough and continues to supply the weapons and the justification for this ethnic cleansing. And after these statements were made, Netanyahu himself was revealed to be in conversation with various countries about taking in Palestinian refugees. We don't really have time to get into what's happening in the West Bank, but just to note that the violence there also continues unabated. It's been a really horrific week there as well, in a place where there is no Hamas, which once again goes to show that the underlying idea here is not what the Israeli military claims it to be. Regional impact has been huge this week. The biggest thing almost certainly being the assassination of the Hamas official in Beirut, the first time that Israel has struck Beirut since the war in 2006. It's an extremely telling attack for a number of reasons. It is the first high-level Hamas commander that Israel has confirmed to have killed in this entire conflict, and it happens to be not in Gaza. It was a highly targeted strike that hit the exact position that this person was in, which they're clearly not doing in Gaza, where they're using 2,000-pound bombs that are destroying entire neighborhoods. So I think it speaks both to the total inability to do what they claim to be trying to do in Gaza, and the fact that their motives clearly are sort of lying elsewhere. There's a lot of speculation about why this happened. This person isn't like a super high level Hamas figure. There are other higher level Hamas figures whose locations are known to the state of Israel that reside in Egypt and in Qatar and other places. But a lot of people are saying that the reason they're hitting Lebanon is specifically to create a regional conflagration, to create the situation where instead of it being Israel conducting this merciless assault on Gaza, that they can reframe it as a sort of like regional war. And they can sort of do that escalatory or, sort of like wildly reckless sort of actions because they know that whatever situation they find themselves in the United States is likely to support them. And so that allows them to sort of massively destabilize the region, to direct attention away from the genocide that's going on, where they're also sort of losing the military campaign there. So a lot to say about that. The Iran bombing does not appear to have been conducted by Israel, but still speaks to the idea of the ongoing destabilization of the region that's happening as a result. Every week I talk a lot about the Bab and Mendeb like stopping of Israeli shipping through the Red Sea that's happening in Yemen. The United States, along with a series of other countries, issued very strong condemnations about this in a way that made a lot of people say, you know, if only they cared as much about Palestinians as they do about shipping containers, which they clearly don't. Just to say that the effects of this continue and they're quite large. But the biggest news on the international level this week is almost certainly the filing by South Africa of genocide charges against Israel in the International Court of Justice. If you take one thing away from all of the stuff I talk about today, it is that you should read that document. It is unbelievably powerful, and it is extremely detailed and well documented. That really goes into everything that Israel has done to sort of commit genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. You know, I pulled out a few quotes here about findings around the destruction of food supply, which we've talked about, the destruction of residential houses, the destruction of the economic capacity of the Gaza Strip, and the kind of broad sense to sort of terrorize and humiliate a civilian population, which they're pulling from a report about Israel's actions in Gaza in 2008. So it just goes to show that this is not a new thing. This is an ongoing campaign to eradicate the Palestinian people. But one of the most powerful parts of this report, and there are many, is that it devotes 9 full pages to statements by Israeli officials of genocidal intent. And it is absolutely devastating and horrific to see all of those things in one place. You know, they list out basically every member of the executive branch of Israel. They go through a whole series of people in the Israeli army and then a group of others. This is a tiny sliver of the total number of quotes that are included in that report. And just to give you a sense of one of them, which isn't even anywhere near the worst one, but just an example, you know, people within the Israeli military are saying things like, be triumphant and finish them off and don't leave anyone behind. Erase the memory of them, erase them, their families, mothers, and children. These animals can no longer live. And it even says, if you have an Arab neighbor, don't wait, go to his home and shoot him. And these are the sort of things people are saying with no repercussion and no consequence. So it really just goes to show. Israel has decided to defend itself from these charges at the International Court of Justice, which itself is a really big deal. They generally just ignore international pressure against them, which I think, again, speaks to the fact that they're terrified about what's happening to their reputation on the global stage. They've picked maybe, you know, there's discussions about who will be defending them at the ICJ, but it may be Alan Dershowitz, who was also once again revealed this week in the Epstein leaks to have been worked like alongside Epstein, like serially sexually assaulting an underage girl, which is a thing that we know about. I mean, of all the horrible things Dershowitz does, just to show that there's a new range of accusations against him. So it's not looking good for them. I did just highlight this quick clip of the White House spokesperson who had to answer questions about the genocide allegations. This looks like a man who is utterly defeated and knows that he's defending a totally indefensible position. So I would not want to be in his shoes today. Zooming back down to the national level, you know, just to note that the U.S.-Israeli relationship is straining. There is increasing acknowledgement of something we've been saying for 90 days now, which is that the idea of eradicating Hamas is an impossible task, especially the way that it's being done. So the sort of moral narrative of this massacre is being undermined increasingly every day. Another high-level resignation in the Biden White House that we unfortunately don't have time to get into. A series of resignations from the Anti-Defamation League saying that their support for hard-right Zionists is reprehensible and indefensible. It's coming from within that organization. And then locally, there have been a million things, but I'll let my colleagues talk about them more. But as a member of AROC, I would be remiss not to at least mention that port shutdown is back. That same ship that AROC blocked played a role in way back, several months ago, that took military aid to Israel, will be returning to Oakland next weekend. So please do join us in shutting that down. And next week, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors will be voting on a ceasefire resolution. It will be Monday, and we need folks to show up at City Hall at 9 a.m. As that is happening, our colleagues from Jewish Voice for Peace issued a letter saying that the Jewish Community Relations Council, which has been massively mobilizing against a ceasefire, does not in fact speak for all Bay Area Jews. So I highly recommend that you find that post and amplify it, specifically if you too do not feel like JCRC speaks for you. That's it. There's always my broader rundown of all the local things that are happening, but I'll let my colleagues talk about those more. Thank you all so much for taking the time. I will close as always with saying, if you want to get more involved, check out AROC's calendar of events. And if you want to get connected, text this phone number, particularly for the Board of Supervisors stuff and the port shutdown and all the things that are happening this coming week. There is a lot that we'll be communicating to you shortly. Thank you all so much.
Emmer, thank you so much, as usual, for making the most of your time. There's, as you said, and as it continues to be a lot going on, and you're doing a wonderful job trying to encapsulate it. A reminder that to please continue to use the Q&A function to send us your questions. Now we'll hear from Ziad from Mecca on the humanitarian situation on the ground in Gaza.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ziad.
Thank you. Thank you so much for organizing this and for this kind of, actually, I call it charge the battery. Thank you, Samer. Thank you, Violet. Thank you, everyone in the beginning, and for all the people participating. Anyway, I can't imagine, I hate the word the humanitarian, because this is the word I know. That international law, the United Nations, everywhere they use it. But in fact, it's when we speak about it, like it's become without meaning, because the whole value of the human being right now and all over the world, especially how Gaza exposed the world and exposed the value of the human being and what we call it the human rights. And because it's like ongoing genocide for over 90 days. It's not something like easy to speak about it in numbers or try to describe it in the international law and to accuse it as ethnic cleansing, genocide, violation of the human rights, blah, 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 etc. The fact that the people in Gaza, they are facing this reality in their daily life, and through our work, and we are in touch with people there. We have our staff members, and actually recently we expand our staff inside Gaza Strip in order to be try to cover some tiny of the needs of the people, because there is a huge need. And just want to remind the people that I hear from the people in the ground. At the same time, I read reports like every one of you. But mostly what we hear from the people in the ground, what we can see sometimes in the media, this is the horrific something, what's going on there and their daily life and the basics. And just want to remind the people first that Gaza Strip, it's not a huge place. It's tiny, 139 square miles, 2.3 million people living there. Most of them, they are children. So it's already the impact on children more than anything else inside Gaza Strip in every level right now. And just I will go very quick. I know Samer mentioned with his slides about the numbers, but just to remind the people, 20 days we had this kind of meeting and we presented the number. It was different totally. And even I didn't prepare bring actually my PowerPoint, because it's the same footages, the same thing almost, bombing, destroying, attacking, massacres, number of massacres every day in many areas in Gaza Strip. The only thing is changing in new people, the number of the people and new names, but it's the same footage, the same attacks have in Gaza. Right now, the number raised up till 22,600 people, 58 people, they are injured, over 10,000 children, they are killed. These are the numbers. It's changing every hour inside Gaza Strip. But the issue, it's what's going on inside on the ground, how Israel actually attacking, what they are doing exactly, and especially right now in the middle area and in the south area, and where the ongoing genocide happening. And when I speak about the middle area, here you speak about huge number of people. They are living in very, very, very tiny area, the middle area. And in Nusayrat, Brej, Maghazi, Deir al-Balah, all of these areas, and the people, they are moving in tiny area. And I speak with my friend, his name Iyad, he's living in the north of Gaza, actually. And since the beginning of the war, 90 days, 91 days, and 92 in Gaza time right now, 92 days, where he is moving actually in less than square miles. He's following his luck, where he and his family, and he speak about over like 60 people, they are moving all the time in 3 square miles, where he tried to find his luck to survive. And the same for the people in the north, they are not able to move to the south, to Rafah, because Rafah, it's already full. Over 1 million people right now living in one tiny city, Rafah. It's the border. This is the last city. The Rafah actually divided, according to Camp David agreement with Egypt, they divided Rafah. So the people, they are almost 1 million people close to the border. Of course, the people didn't push the fence. They didn't go to the other side, to the Egyptian. And this is coming as a decision from the people. They don't want to leave. And some of the people still in the north, still living in the north area, where it was on October 8th, the bombing started there. They didn't leave until now, like my colleague yet, in that area. And this is something like where it comes to the people, they have shortage in everything. They have, in north of Gaza, it's very, very, very hard. The other day, even United Nations, and here, I'm praising United Nations. United Nations, another kind of corruption that we face it there in Gaza Strip. But even United Nations convoy of trucks went to drop food, and some of the support, the people living in the north, they were bombed actually by the Israelis. Even they had coordination with the Israelis. So there are a shortage in everything, in every level there. Yes, they allowed some trucks to get into Rafah, but some of these stuff cannot reach out to the people in the north, and rarely, including us as an organization, sometimes we move things from Rafah to the middle area, but it's really very hard, very risky. But still, I give credit to the people there in the ground, not to us, not to United Nations. People, they are willing to take the risk to support each other, to be with each other. Here we are speaking about disaster is happening in Gaza day by day. I don't know if there are any kind of word to describe what's going on. It's ongoing genocide. And as I said before, I hope we will not get numb. This is our responsibility, all of us, not to get numb. Over 90 days, we need to get back. I know we had a huge protest in San Francisco. There were tens of thousands of people, where the number of the people they still killed in Gaza, they are less than 10,000. Right now, we are reaching actually over 22,000 people, they are killed. At the same time, you have between 7,000 to 8,000, they are already still under the rebels, killed, and most of them children actually, and women. So it's up to us right now how to react to all that. And I say this because I was in discussion with one of my colleagues, and when she compared the response of the world, the solidarity movement, yeah, in the beginning, they were very strong movement. Right now, they feel like maybe they slow down. Even I try to support her. Hey, it's the new year, Christmas, people sometime, but still there are people doing actions. But when it comes to their mind, when they think about the international solidarity movement, that it's after 90 days, how much we are doing, how can mobilize more. And this is something just to influence us, to motivate us to move forward, that the people still counting on the solidarity movement more than anything else when it comes to the international community. Of course, people, they count on themselves and they're fighters. But this is what they say. This is what the main goal. They count on themselves. They are not leaving. Their steadfastness. They are fighting back, and their fights, people, they are not just sit down there. There are huge resistance still happening in Gaza. And you speak about a huge number of people, like the issue of big, I mean, right now we face even the human rights organization that the number of the people they are arrested and the people they are disappeared. There are unknown prisons inside Israel right now, where many people of Gaza, they are arrested and they are jailed, include women. There are kidnapping babies and children. There is a famous case now about a baby kidnapped from Gaza and went to inside Israel. There are the assassination, people arrested and later they assassinate them, they kill them. All of this happening at the same time while the bombing and the genocide. The issue of power is not there. The medicine is still a huge problem. The hospitals, almost Gaza, and out of any kind, there are hospitals, they are missing like the basics to deal with the patients, with the injured people. And every hospital, especially in the south, in the middle and the south area, north area, almost no hospitals done. They destroyed it. And the people, they try actually in the hospital, just try to help as much as they can, but it's overwhelming. Even the capacity of this, some of these hospitals actually like 200 beds. Right now, they have over 1,000 people inside the building, including the other people they are living around the evacuated people they are living around the hospitals. In any case, this is something like going on, and right now the focus is in Khan Yunis. Another, we can say, like the ongoing genocide right now, it's targeting families, specific families. Still, we can see doctors, they are killed, medical teams, they are killed, journalists. Actually, today, a journalist, his name Akram, he was killed inside Gaza too. So still the target is the same. Nothing is slowed down. Nothing slow Israel down, because the international community, what we call it, like United States, Europe, etc., they are never slowing down. I want the Gaza is, I want to say one thing before I end. The Gaza situation inside, it's become, I don't want to say a routine, but as much the people, they try to survive day by day. Just the day, like even to get the food, to get the water, it's become their daily struggle. It's winter, it's very cold. Blankets, it's like searching for gold. It's not easy to find the blanket inside Gaza, and we wish we can bring the blanket aside, but Israel, of course, controlling the border more than anything. The only thing they allowed like 60, 70 trucks. Luckily, sometimes if 100 trucks enter, mostly it's like coming with water, some fuel, and some food enter Gaza. But this is not enough. In the old days during the siege, Gaza needs at least minimum 500 trucks to enter Gaza per day to cover the people's needs. The other thing is important here to speak about West Bank. West Bank, I don't want to, it's different from Gaza, but still the ongoing genocide targeting the people in West Bank. The number of the people they are killed in West Bank right now, there are 336 people. They are killed. Settlers, they are lashing everywhere. While I'm talking with you, there are a lot of reports coming how they are attacking different cities. Ya'bad and Tulkarem, Nur Shams the other day, in Nablus and Jenin, it's over daily. In Hebron area, in Safar Yatta, and even in the Jordan Valley, the other villages, how they are targeted by settlers. So it's going in every level. And the other thing, when we speak about genocide, yes, the focus is inside Gaza, some in West Bank, but all the Palestinians all over the world. I will share with you, this is something we are dealing with recently, where thousands of the students from Gaza, they are studying abroad, and many of them studying in Egypt. When here we speak about thousands of them. Some of these students, actually, their families erased. They are not exist anymore. And not just their houses destroyed. They are not, because almost 70% of all the buildings in Gaza Strip is destroyed. And imagine, like, they have nothing, and they have no connection, and they need support. So every Palestinian all over, they are affected by what's going on there. And what I say, like, yeah, we need to do more, to be honest with you. This is what I hear from the people there on the ground. We need to add more. And because 92 days, and the number is increasing, and still we are not able, the language, I can say, it's used until now, it's coming from the international community, and here I'm speaking about the main governments, not only in the United States, even Europe, they didn't change that much their language. Still, they are justifying what Israel do. The last thing I will say, that when we say humanitarian or something about Gaza, all the time when you talk with the people in Gaza, it's something different. You don't have this kind of feeling like, yeah, they are human being. And I can say all of us Palestinian, part of us destroyed, not our spirit, but part of us watching what's going on there. And for the people in Gaza, all around Palestine, yeah, part of us destroyed, but our spirit is still the same. It's very the same. And for the people in Gaza, yeah, they feel proud for what's going on. They hope that will change, not just for Palestinian and not just for liberation movement. It will change the value, the way how we look about or value the human being, and we understand what's going on, how colonial system is function, because Israel as a colonial system, it was created by other colonial systems, the British, the United States, and the French, etc. And it's changed a little bit in the way how we direct the struggle and bring the struggle in our daily life, because not just we pick and choose, it's become a lifestyle struggle, and struggle for social justice, not just for Palestine, for anything. For any cause in this earth, it's a lifestyle. This is your life. You identify you, and this is how they say it. This is not me, to be honest with you. This is what I hear from the people, because they are facing death in any moment. Every call can be the last call. Every text, it can be the last text. Every voicemail, it can be the last voicemail when we communicate with our colleagues or our partners or our volunteers or our friends on the ground there. And just they want the people to continue what they are doing and to increase. And I will leave it for you. Thank you so much.
Ziad, thank you so much for that sobering reminder of the need to increase our pressure on activity and stay resilient in the fight. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Asta from Center for Constitutional Rights to talk a little bit about the DCI-Palestine v. Biden case. Thank you, Asta.
Thanks so much, Thomas, and thanks everybody who spoke before me for sharing about the devastating conditions in Gaza right now that have been going on for over 90 days. So I wanted to just give an overview of a case that the Center for Constitutional Rights and our co-counsel at Vanderhout Law Firm filed in the middle of November against President Biden, Secretary of Defense Austin, and Secretary of State Blinken. The lawsuit is on behalf of two Palestinian human rights organizations, Al-Haq and Defense for Children International Palestine. It's on behalf of 3 Palestinians who are currently in Gaza, and it's on behalf of 5 Palestinian Americans who are based in the US, but who have families in Gaza. The case is filed in US federal court. It's in the Northern District of California. It's with a judge who's in the Oakland courthouse. And the relief, really the goal of this lawsuit, is to get an order from the court getting the defendants to stop all support of Israel, all US support of Israel and its genocidal campaign in Gaza. This would include military support and weapons. And I think this is really important to uplift with recent reports that 22,000 US sourced bombs were dropped by Israel in Gaza, and really just the understanding that I'm sure all of you all who are listening in today have, that this campaign, Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza, would not be possible without US support, without US material backing of Israel. So in the lawsuit, we raised 2 claims against these defendants. The first is that they're liable for failing in their obligation to prevent genocide. And the second is that they're liable for being complicit or for actually supporting or aiding and abetting the genocide of Palestinian people in Gaza. And I'll talk about those 2 sort of obligations and duties in a moment. But this liability arises under customary international law, which US courts have recognized is a part of US federal common law. So a federal district court in the United States can decide issues related to the prohibition on genocide, which is a really clear prohibition under international law. And the definition of genocide is codified in the 1948 Genocide Convention, which both Israel and the US are parties to. And when it was being discussed in the international community, the US was a major proponent of. And it's also codified, the definition of genocide is also codified in US federal criminal law, the Genocide Implementation Act of 1988, which defendant Biden, when he was a senator at the time in the 80s, actually co-sponsored this bill, which became law. So the definition of genocide, both under the International Convention and under this criminal law in the US, includes two elements. The first element is the underlying act of genocide. And in our case, we lay out that Israel is committing at least three of these underlying acts. One is killing members of a particular group, in this case, Palestinian people in Gaza. The second, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of that group. And the third, deliberately inflicting upon the group conditions of life calculated to bring about that group's destruction. And so obviously we can see through the airstrikes and other targeting of people that there's direct killing and bodily and mental harm. But as you can see from these definitions of genocide, it's not necessary for there to be direct killing, although of course in Gaza there is. What is a crucial part of this genocide is the total siege on Gaza. The siege that has not allowed food, fuel, medicine, water, electricity, basic necessities for life to continue in Gaza, the attack on the health sector that has collapsed health infrastructure in Gaza, making it impossible for people to survive. So these are the underlying acts that form the ongoing genocide. And then the second element, of course, is specific intent. So these underlying acts have to be committed with the intent to destroy Palestinian people in Gaza. And as we touched on earlier, there's so many reports of direct statements, of statements of intent, which are direct evidence of this genocidal intent from Israeli officials at the highest levels of government. And this intent can also be understood through the scope of Israel's attack on Gaza. But of course, our lawsuit is not against Israel, it's against US defendants. And so, like I said, the liability on the US arises because of the US's influence over Israel. It is required under international law, once it learns of a substantial risk of genocide, it is required to use all measures within its power to stop the unfolding genocide, the ongoing genocide in Gaza. But that is not what the US has done. The US has used its influence actually to continue supporting Israel. That brings us to our second claim, which is the aiding and abetting or complicity claim. The US is prohibited from supporting this genocide, but since the moment of learning of it, the United States has continued to rapidly send weapons, using emergency authority to send weapons without congressional oversight. It hasn't stopped sending this support, and so that forms the aiding and abetting claim. So I wanted to just reiterate what the relief that we're seeking from the court is. Like Thomas said, there's a hearing on this on an emergency motion that we submitted. The hearing is on January 26th. And the emergency order that we're seeking is the court to order defendants to stop supporting Israel in its genocidal campaign in Gaza. And that would include, we are requesting, in order to stop these defendants, to stop the United States from sending further military support, including weapons, to Israel while it's carrying out this genocidal assault on Gaza. And again, I think this is really crucial to recognize and center, given the how indispensable US weapons and financial support is to Israel's attack on Gaza. I want to just sort of uplift the significance of this, both this case and the case in front of the International Court of Justice, genocide is understood by the international community as being the crime of crimes. President Biden himself has underscored in the past that this crime committed anywhere is an issue of national security, that it's an attack against humanity. And I think having two cases of genocide pending, one against Israel at the ICJ and one against the US in federal court, is really remarkable for two countries that paint themselves as global moral leaders in the international community. And I think as many of us in this call, in this conversation today, recognize that's not what they are, and that these cases, I think, are intended to reveal that they are instead internationally isolated. Happy to answer any questions, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Asta, and thank you, CCR, for all your work on this case. We'll be coordinating with CCR over the course of this month to share more information on this case and more information on actions that Bay Resistance, AROC, APTP, CPE, and others will be supporting. So we're gonna looks like we're going to go a little bit over. We thank you for sticking with us. We just have a couple more announcements just to share. So Annie, maybe we could get both Rafilwe and Michelle up together just to share some of those announcements before we close.
Hey y'all, good afternoon. My name is Rafilwe, community organizer with the Anti-Police Terror Project. We are getting ready, less than 2 weeks away now from celebrating, uplifting, and honoring, reclaiming Martin Luther King's radical legacy. This will be the 10th annual year of community-led, APTP-led events, and that legacy of critiquing U.S. imperialism and fighting for our most impoverished, changing material conditions. To kick off this week of action, Saturday, January 13th, there's going to be a port shutdown for Palestine. Folks might recall back late fall 2023, there was a ship in the Oakland port that was going to send weapons to Israel. That same ship is now coming back to Oakland, and we want to make sure that they remember that there will be no business as usual so long as there is an occupation and the continuous bombardment of Gaza. If you'd like more information about that, you can text a number that I will put in the chat shortly. You can also find all the information I'm going to share at antipoliceterrorproject.com or .org/reclaimMOK. But yes, we'll kick off Saturday, January 13th with AROC, port shutdown for Palestine in Oakland. Please be there. Then on Monday, we're going to have our annual march for Martin Luther King. We'll be at Oscar Grant Plaza that Monday. Meet us at 11 a.m. at Oscar Grant Plaza. You'll have from phenomenal speakers. We'll have an all-day healing village there that folks can be able to be with, regardless of whether or not you join the mobile part of the march. Then Tuesday, we're going to have, we'll be at West Oakland BART Station talking to our community members about our Safe Transit, Safe Lives campaign. Our partners over at Surge are going to be having a virtual event for white folks, calling in white folks reconsidering their relationship with the police. Wednesday, there's going to be our Defund Town Hall, where you'll get to hear some updates from the coalition, particularly issues that impact our youth and ways that we can advocate at the Oakland Unified School District, which will be meeting right after that Defund Town Hall. That same evening, our counterparts in Sacramento are hosting a virtual film screening that you should tap into as well on reimagining public safety. Thursday, the 16th, we'll have a cop watch training that'll be hybrid from the People's House and on Zoom. Then Friday, we'll have a MH First intro training with some mutual aid giveaway that'll also be hybrid. You can meet us at the People's House for the resources and join virtually for the training. And then Monday, so we have a really expanded week of action this year from Saturday the 13th to Monday the 22nd. Our folks over at BAM are going to have a film screening, or a play rather, in partnership with us. And so you can check out all this information on the website that I'll put in the chat, but really want to highlight that action on the 13th for the port shutdown. Text the number to get additional details on what time to meet. And then Monday, definitely join us for the march at Oscar Grant Plaza.
Thanks, Refillway. And yeah, just super appreciative of all the speakers today. I am going to share just a few slides. I'll go through these quite quickly, but you will get them in the wrap-up email that will come out to you soon. This week we want to really make sure folks' attention is on this demand to stop arming Israel. There's sort of three key opportunities at the federal level. Bernie Sanders has introduced, or made a statement to stop arming Israel, to deny the additional funding, the supplemental funding to Israel that we believe will be voted on in the first couple days of next week in the Senate. Of course, these court filings by South Africa and CCR that we've been hearing about, starting on January 11th and 12th, and then going to January 26th, super critical. Yeah, and then critical to continue to put pressure on Senators Padilla and Senator Butler to stop that deadly deal. Also critical to continue to bird dog and call and write every day to especially these representatives, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Swalwell, and Ami Bera in California from the House. Want to share a couple photos from a wake-up call that folks did on January 1st for Nancy Pelosi, calling on her to make her New Year's resolution a ceasefire now. This was done in front of her house at 6 a.m. So beautiful actions are happening, bringing lots of folks together to make these calls. Of course, continue to write and call. Here's a list of all of the reps, and our call is really, until there is justice in Palestine, there will be no peace for politicians here. We're going to wake them up early. We're going to keep calling and emailing and making sure that they understand that their constituents want a ceasefire now. This morning, folks woke Mullen up, Representative Mullen up at his house. They've been doing this a lot lately. This is in South San Francisco, Daly City area. So bird dogging is really critical. You'll get this slide, but the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights has great toolkits, and one of them is on bird dogging. So you'll get this link. And then I'm sure folks heard, but just to shout it out, there was a huge action on Wednesday calling on the state of California legislature to call for a ceasefire from our federal officials. And we shut down the state assembly, a historic event on the first day of the assembly being back in session. So it was very powerful. And the call is really to divest from genocide and reinvest in communities. There's great graphics and numbers, and folks can use this frame. This campaign will continue on through the year to divest from the funding that goes to Israel in the form of weapons at the federal level that California taxpayers contribute. And then lastly, just want to remind folks to continue calling and emailing DA Jenkins' office to drop the charges against the Bay Bridge 78. And then just a wrap-up slide with all of the different, or many of the different, because they're popping up every day. Thanks to all of you that are coming up with creative actions, finding ways to organize the people in your networks and communities, making Palestine and this, unfolding genocide and attempted ethnic cleansing visible everywhere we go, not allowing business as usual, but making sure that our electeds at every level are hearing from us, and that we as a people are learning. And as Ziad said so beautifully, that this is creating a pathway for us to see, have the veils lifted on how colonization functions, on how systems of control and domination are functioning. So keep organizing with your folks, using this as an opportunity to, well, as awful as it is, to be able to build people's power for liberation, for justice, to stop this horrific attacks on the people of Palestine. And yeah, stay strong, stay together, keep taking care of yourself, use those somatics as you're talking about, and visibilizing Palestine everywhere you go. Thanks, y'all.